Alola, a region of scorching sunshine, tropical beaches, and the most aggressively unfair boss fights ever put in a mainline Pokemon game. Except that one. That's so stupid! Somebody at Game Freak took the criticism that Pokemon is too easy very personally and responded by designing a game that often seems actively hostile to the player. It's raining in this fight? So naturally, I decided to turn up the heat even more by doing a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Ultra Sun using only Fire-type Pokemon. Unlike some other games, Ultra Sun actually has a generous number of red-hot fire types, which is great, because we're gonna need every single one of them to make it through Alola's brutal island trials. First things first, my starter, everyone's favorite house cat, for 33 levels. And Dog the Litten here is my only encounter for the prolonged tutorial that makes up the first hour of Ultra Sun gameplay, and after burning through How's team like a chef who didn't train at Le Cordon Bleu,
get your career cooking! Literally!
We face a very serious problem. Teacher Emily. Emily's one of those hard-ass teachers whose pedagogical philosophy is pushing her students to the absolute limit. Those that survive the pressure come out as diamonds, and those that don't go to ASU. See, Teacher Emily has a lone Poplio, which is an immediate problem for Dog. At such a low level, Poplio's water guns do an alarming amount of damage, so literally the only way to win this fight would be to spam lick and pray for multiple full paralyses. But even if we somehow pull off that cheesy dub against Emily, 5 minutes later, there's a fight against Alima that is literally impossible thanks to the devastating combination of his Yungoos and Smeargle, neither of which can be paralyzed by Lick, and that's ignoring the fact that Dog will almost certainly overlevel regardless. So pack it up, folks, we're done here. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Nuzlocke content, and until then, remember to always play around the critical hit. Just kidding, you've been viced. You know Vice, the shitty movie about a US vice president starring Amy Adams? No, the other shitty movie about a US vice president starring Amy Adams. The one where they roll the credits halfway through the movie. Yup, that's what the kids call getting viced. Anyways, in the interest of making this challenge actually possible, Dog's getting a little help for these first few fights, and the real Nuzlocke starts once we've defeated Alima. So with the run officially underway, I can get a brand new teammate, Wax the Litwick via Island Scan, which is a blatant ripoff of Scanners. You guys remember Scanners? If you don't know what Scanners are, ask your childhood friend who went to prison for shoplifting. Soon after that, Streak the Growlithe also joins the team. Intimidate is going to be absolutely pivotal for the various fights against powerful physical attackers, drastically reducing the damage that they'll be able to dish out. He doesn't have Intimidate, does he? Of course not. Well, that makes the fight against the Totem Gumshoe significantly harder. For so early in the game, the damage output from this guy is criminal. He should be in prison. So it's up to Dog to use Growl for a manual attack drop as a Scary Face lowers our speed. Gumshoes calls for aid, and in order to bring this back to a 1v1 as quickly as possible, I choose to target the Disciple down with a few Embers. Once Gumshoes is again flying solo, I switch to Wax, aiming to go for a risky Fire Spin. Gumshoes responds with a super effective Bite, and mercifully, it's not a critical hit. Our Fire Spin also connects, resulting in significant chip damage at the end of the turn. I risk another critical hit for a chance at more damage, and thankfully go unpunished. With the second turn of Fire Spin chip, Gumshoes is already below 50%, but at this point, death is looming over Wax's little shoulder, so I switch into Streak, who rises to the occasion and finishes things off with a few more Embers. It wasn't clean, it wasn't comfortable, and it required dodging a ridiculous amount of critical hits, but we have successfully made it through the first trial with all three of our flames still burning bright. Before taking on Melee Island's Grand Trial, we need to be packing some more heat, so with another island scan, this time on Route 3, I pick up our newest member, Crossbun the Charmander. And not long after that, we grab another encounter in Melee Meadow. With a sip of red nectar, Toddy the Oricorio will switch from the Pom-Pom style to the Bile style, thereby becoming a Fire Flying type, but that's not actually possible until Ula Ula Island, which is still a lifetime away. So for now, now Toddy serves as the team's head cheerleader. Into the box she goes as the rest of my Pokemon risk their lives against Hala and his fighting types. Now on paper, this matchup seems virtually unlosable. Machop and Makuhita have no way to hit Wax, so the only real threat is our foe's Ace Crabrawler, but quite a threat he is, because he has access to Pursuit, which of course hits Wax for super effective damage and punishes switches. So this entire fight comes down to making a prediction. See, after Hala's Machop uses Focus Energy, the swap to Crabrawler is guaranteed on the very next turn, something I learned on my last playthrough of Ultra Sun using only Ghost types. This ensures that on the same turn, I can safely switch out Wax and bring in Crossbun, now a Charmeleon, who happens to know Dragon Rage, an absurdly broken move for so early in the game. One hit sends Crabrawler deep into the yellow. Unfortunately, Hala decides to rip an all-out pummeling Z move that leaves Crossbun one critical hit away from death. But with that, a second Dragon Rage connects, we secure the KO, and that effectively ends the battle. Wax is all we need to easily defeat both Machop and Makuhita. At least in theory. In actual practice, Makuhita has Sand Attack, which turns this matchup into an unnecessarily long series of accuracy checks. So after a while, I get impatient and switch back to Crossbun so that he can finish things off with one final Dragon Rage. But that's the first Grand Island trial complete, which means we can now call up Tauros on the Poke Ride. Gone are the days of slowly jogging to our destination. Now I can feel the breeze in my hair as we race down the streets of Alola with reckless abandon. Uh-oh, wait, there's someone in the way. Hey, watch out, dude! Get out of the way! Move, move, move! Oh, no!
Alola PD, what do we got here? Seems like it was a hit and run. Poor guy never saw it coming. Looks like he never heard it coming either. What do you mean, Chief? See there? Those are legally ambiguous noise-canceling earbuds. Even if the driver was yelling at the victim to move, he never would have heard it. Brutal. Yup, that's why I make sure to use the essential open earbuds from the sponsor of this video, Raycon. Video? What video? Raycon's essential... Raycon's essential open earbuds have an open ear design and sit just outside your ear canal so that you can listen to crystal clear audio while still hearing the world around you. Who are you talking to? And also, what's with your voice? I use my open earbuds pretty much every day, whether it's when I'm working on a case, on a run before my morning donuts, or out walking my dog Poppy. Wait, a dog? What kind of Pokemon is that? The essential open earbuds also feature a multi-angular hook for secure placement, 36 hours of battery life with their charging case, and they're just a fraction of the price of competing brands. Okay, seriously, who are you talking to? As the weather gets warmer in places other than Boston, the essential open earbuds are the perfect way to refresh your routine this spring. So be sure to go to buyraycon.com/FlygonOpen to get 20% off. Thanks so much to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the challenge. Challenge? Wait, where are you going? We still have a murder to solve.
With the wind in our sails and Dog finally evolving into Tora Cat, we're off to Akala Island, which is usually where Alolan hardcore Nuzlocke start to get real tricky. Between trainers who threaten massive damage, powerful totems designed to snuff out budding flames, and a series of punishingly low level caps, this island feasts on the flesh of the unprepared. Exhibit A, Dexio, otherwise known as the Dark-type check. If you have one, he's a joke, but if you don't, you're gonna have a bad time because his Espeon Psybeams hit extremely hard for this point in the game. Just a single critical hit or confusion means that you're probably losing a Pokemon, and sometimes the speedy feline doesn't even need that. After nailing him with Crossbun's Dragon Rage, Wax comes in and takes a Psybeam straight to the wick. After his berry triggers, he's left at a very manageable 27 HP. A Nightshade should be enough, assuming Dexio cooperates. But sadly, he does not, and a high roll Psybeam immediately kills Wax, marking the first death of the run. Our time together, short though it may have been, will be remembered fondly. We simply would not have made it to Akala Island without Wax, and like most heroes, it was fate for him to burn out long before his legend ever did. Dog comes in to claim feline superiority, though it's hard not to feel fear for what the future holds as our team drops down to 3 members well before we've even come close to the hardest fights this island has to throw at us. At the daycare center in Paniola Ranch, in a cruel twist of irony, I'm gifted a descendant of Wax Murderer. Pocket the Eevee joins the team, and mercifully a Firestone is available right away, so we can immediately evolve him into a Flareon that brings our Fire-type count back up to an acceptable and alliterative 4 flames. With that though, we've made it to Brooklet Hill, home of the Water Trial, and naturally a downright horrifying matchup for my Fire types. The totem Araquanid that lurks in the depths of Brooklet Hill is a menace, even without objectively the worst type matchup possible. This fight takes place in the rain. Araquanid has the ability Water Bubble, which doubles the power of water type moves and halves the power of fire type moves. We might as well be facing off against a primordial Kyogre, that's how hopeless this feels. But there is one move that gives us a fighting chance. Torment. See, this rarely used, secretly devastating move prevents the target from using the same attack twice in a row, and when paired with Protects on every other turn, it means that we can effectively stop the opposing Araquanid from using his run-ending bubbles. Of course, we do still have to tank the very first bubble, though with some defensive investment, Dog does just that. Though that now brings in Araquanid's little helper, and this guy is free to spam bubbles all the livelong day, so we're not completely in the clear just yet. The good news is that I can switch to the specially defensive Pocket, who thanks to the life-saving Torment, only needs to eat a bite from Araquanid before moderately blunting Dewpider's bubble. So on the next turn, when Araquanid is once again allowed to use bubble, we just go for a Protect. Just like that, this fight is extremely doable, especially now that Pocket can use a massive breakneck Blitz Z move to instantly delete Dewpider. From here, we're basically just dealing with bug types. I switched to Crossbun, who also has Protect, and the rest of the fight becomes an exercise in controlled patience. Dragon Rage's guaranteed 40 damage does wonders, and even with another call for aid, there's nothing that the 8-legged spider... Wait. What's with Game Freak and giving all their spider Pokemon less than 8 legs? I mean, other than this absolute legend. Say what you will about Spidoops, but at least he's actually a spider. Anyways, there's nothing Araquanid can do, and after just a few turns, Crossbun knocks out both of our foes, winning us the Water Trial with shockingly no deaths at all. It's actually hard to think about any feat in all of human history that's even half as impressive as that. Maybe the invention of the iPod Shuffle. I mean, how did they fit so many songs in such a small device? With that anxiety-inducing trial finally behind us, we arrive at the Battle Royale Dome, where I can give RNGesus the bird and buy an ability capsule that allows me to change Streak's ability to Intimidate. All it took was real, legitimate hours of Mantine surfing. In Wella Volcano Park, there's suddenly a fantastic number of new encounters up to grab. First is Wings the Fletchling, who takes no time at all to evolve into the Fire-type Fletchinder. And shortly after that, I run into a Salandit. Unfortunately, he's male, and even unfortunately-er, he does not respect the Dr. One-Ball HG title, repeatedly breaking free from ball after ball, while simultaneously giving me a taste of my own bitter medicine and ripping Dragon Rages that put my team in serious danger. After paying a consulting company for a pricey but fair risk-benefit analysis, I decide that it's best to just give up on the Salandit. There's at least one other route where I can catch one if I desperately want one for my collection, so our final encounter for now is Head the Magby, and this toddler is about to experience a serious lifestyle change from his carefree days of strolling around Wella Volcano Park, because I immediately enroll Head in an intensive speed training program designed to make him the fastest North American sprinter since Noah Lyles. With a power anklet strapped firmly to his ankle, he trains by murdering Verdant Cave's denizens until all he knows is speed. At some point, he even contracts Pokérus, which seems to happen to my Pokemon far more often than is statistically likely. Hand over my heart, I really don't know if I did something to accidentally change that, or if it's just a coincidence, like how my tummy hurts after I eat dairy. But really, why all this effort here? Why pack so much speed into such a little body? Well, because Head has been engineered for a very specific mission: to outspeed the Totem Marowak at the top of Wella Volcano Park, to bait the kill with Brick Break so that Marowak doesn't go for Detect, to steal the fearsome Totem's held Thick Club with a Thief, and then, ultimately, to die.
You've kept him alive so that he can die at the proper moment. You've been raising him like a pig for slaughter.
Thank you, Head. You did all you were asked, and you did it perfectly. Now enjoy your eternal rest. With Marowak unable to reclaim his thick club from Head's cold, rigid hands, it's now much safer for Pocket to face off against his two fellow fire types. Salazzle immediately goes for a Torment, and then Brick Break does solid damage as we use our Breakneck Blitz Z move to slam the lizard within an inch of her life. This ensures that on the following turn, a quick attack gets the KO as a Brick Break drops Pocket into the yellow. Streak then comes in, dropping the totem's attack with his drug-induced intimidation, and dealing some solid damage with a super effective bite, before finally tagging out to our reliable closer. Dragon Rage once again does exactly what Dragon Rage is designed to do, and we take the KO to win the third island trial. With a toddler-shaped hole in our team, it's once again time to hunt for another encounter to get back to a full party of 6 sizzling sausages. It's yet again Island Scan to the rescue, this time on Route 8 to pick up our third fire-type starter, Stuff the Combuskin. And now we finally get a bit of a respite from the dangers of the Alolan Island trials. Mallow's trial against the Totem Lurantis is normally an absolute nightmare. Between her massive damage output, synthesis healing, as well as extremely annoying and highly effective allies, this fight has killed more teammates than I'd care to count. Fortunately for us, we don't just have a good answer, we have the best answer. Wings the Fletchender makes his debut here, and because he resists all of Lurantis' attacks, this fight ends up being pretty free. The most important thing to do is to ensure that Lurantis takes enough damage on turn 1 so that she calls up Comfey instead of the ancient power spamming Kecleon. And with enough patience to fill a hospital, victory is eventually ours and we're off to Connie City. And that's excellent news because it means I can finally get a second Firestone to evolve Streak into an Arcanine. Gone are the days of Streak's mediocrity, as he's now fully equipped to be the monstrous legend he was born to be. All it took was a bit of hard work. And drugs. But as great as things have been here for a little, Olivia, the rock-type specialist, is our next opponent for the Akala Island Grand Trial, and her Pokemon can hit every single member of my team for super effective damage. Except Stuff, but have you ever actually looked at Combuskin's stats? They're not exactly earth-shattering. Simply put, this Stone Cold Fox has the chance to bring our journey to a screeching halt. And it doesn't help that I completely misread the level cap. Plus, Pokemon fans are never beating the allegations. But either way, I've got a plan. The fight opens up against Anorith, and this prehistoric prick is packed with so many attack EVs that the best thing to do is immediately burn my Z move to take the quick KO with an Inferno Overdrive. So far, so good. And next out is Lileep, who's built to be defensive and therefore threatens with significantly less damage. She has Ancient Power and Brine, so I immediately start by using Confides to drop her special attack. The idea here is to neuter Lileep as much as possible, though this does risk critical hits, as well as potential Ancient Power boosts, the latter of which does indeed happen on just her second hit. But all of this is to properly set up for as safe a switch as possible into Stuff, who will have to be our answer into Olivia's Ace Lycanroc. After finally taking our second KO with a low sweep, the Devilish Coyote comes out. Between his maxed out speed and access to a Z move that serves as an instant delete button into any one of my teammates, this is where things could go totally wrong. But they don't. Lycanroc opts for Bite instead of his Z move, allowing Low Sweep to drop him into the yellow. And then thanks to the speed drop, we move first as a Brick Break finishes the job. Okay, well, thanks. My best guess as to why Lycanroc didn't immediately rip his Continental Crush Z move is that the AI treats Rock Tomb as a form of speed control, and since Lycanroc was faster than Stuff, the AI never clicks Rock Tomb unless it kills, and therefore never goes for the Z move either. But don't quote me on that, it's a total guess, like when my doctor tells me I'm lactose intolerant. But with the second Grand Island trial complete, we can finally leave Akala Island after only losing a very acceptable 2 teammates on its soil. And yet, Ula Ula Island promises its own series of back-breaking challenges, though the new island's first trial, and our 5th overall, is usually pretty straightforward. Sure, the totem Togedemaru gets a +2 defense boost and has an unhealthy addiction to spamming Spiky Shield, but a steady stream of quad-effective bulldozes to avoid chip damage from the Squeaker Spikes is often more than enough to get the job done, especially when using a bulky Pokemon like Streak. But after a few turns, it becomes clear that I've underestimated the unnaturally spherical rodent, and foolishly, I also take the KO on his ally Skarmory, allowing our foe to call in the far more problematic Dedenne since she has Charm for attack drops and Super Fang to instantly half any of my Pokemon's HP. I try to take her out quickly, hoping that Togedemaru will waste time going for spiky shields, but we soon find ourselves one hit away from watching Streak go to doggy heaven. So I have to switch. Unideal given that Skarmory set up Stealth Rocks before we took the KO. Stuff comes in, but even with an Eviolite after Stealth Rock damage, a nasty Super Fang, and a Zing Zap, our once kickin' chicken immediately finds himself at 21 HP. What the hell is wrong with these mice, man? They're tearing me apart. Well, I switch into Pocket, who thankfully only takes Stealth Rock damage as Dedenne rips a Charm and Ratatouille prepares for a bounce. A Fire Fang connects into the smaller rodent, but she still survives in the red and then rips a nasty Super Fang that ensures Togedemaru's mercifully critless bounce drops Pocket down to 16 HP and paralyzes him for good measure. But it's okay, I'm staying calm, so stop asking me if I'm calm. I'm obviously really calm. I go for one more switch. Cross Bun comes in and a familiar chain of events sees his HP plummeting straight into the red. What I don't understand is why Dedenne isn't going for discharge when she sees a kill, but it's heavily punishing my switches and now I'm all out of rope. Someone's not making it out of this fight alive. Or are they? Because Cross Bun can actually fire off a Flame Burst into Togedemaru for the KO. So as long as Dedenne just goes for Super Fang again, nah, of course not. Why would she behave the exact same way she did on the previous 2 turns? Well, that means that a mere 3 levels before becoming your sister's boyfriend's favorite Pokemon, Cross Bun, the indisputable MVP of the early game, is dead. And guys, I gotta confess that I probably overthought this a bit. In hindsight, it would have been better to just rip an Inferno Overdrive on the first 1 or 2 turns of the fight. Based on how much Flame Burst did there at the end, a Z move from Cross Bun was probably just a one-shot, so that was pretty stupid. The good news is that Cross Bun's vacancy is swiftly filled by a whole slew of new teammates, including yet another island-scanned Fire-type starter, Tamale the Munferno. And speaking of Fire-type starters, it's time to go full VGC and evolve Dog into an Incineroar. What's that, boy? More recruits? Great idea, buddy. How about the Super Turtle Sisters, Box and Potato? They may be slow, but there's not a physical attacker that they can't handle. And who could forget about the most stylish Hellhound on the Upper East Side, Topic the Houndoom. So with all 3 of these new encounters in tow, we make our way through the thrifty Mega Mart where the totem Mimikyu rears her ugly head. And as if an Omni Boost wasn't scary enough, I once again mess up the level cap and go in under-leveled. I also accidentally lead with the wrong Pokemon, which completely messes up my opening turns. I had been using Topic to deal with Mimikyu's ghostly roommates and forgot to switch to Streak prior to the actual totem fight, which would have granted an immediate and completely free Intimidate. Thankfully, Streak can simply switch in on a resisted play rough, so it's not that big of a deal. Mimikyu calls Banette for aid, but a flinch from Streak's first bite ensures that the haunted puppet does absolutely nothing before going down. And Streak even has enough HP to break Mimikyu's disguise before needing to switch into Potato for her debut. With Shell Armor, she can't get crit, but she's also not doing much damage with Flamethrower, so I make one more switch back to Streak to drop our foe's attack down to -1. Even then, though, this matchup is extremely uncomfortable, but with some careful positioning, we slowly chip away at the mighty totem. Eventually, she brings in her water-type ally Jellicent, who we have no way to quickly take out, and with double the attacks coming our way each turn, we quickly find ourselves back against the wall. On a switch to Topic, Mimikyu lands a nasty critical hit play rough, which is supplemented by Jellicent's Nightshade. And now the greenest of our teammates is sitting at just 41 HP. It's obvious what needs to happen here. My team needs a sacrifice, and Topic fits the bill. It's nothing personal, he's just completely outclassed by Dog. In Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, frail Pokemon with a speed stat under 100 tend to really struggle because so many of the enemies in the late game are running max speed with perfect IVs and a plus speed nature, to the point where these sub 100s really can't keep up. Even so, it's still always sad to lose a teammate, so with a heavy heart, I lock in Bite and throw Topic to the wolves. but Play Rough misses. And then Topic's bite lands a critical hit on Jellicent for the immediate KO. It seems that every dog really does have his day, and this one is Topic's. He just didn't want to die. With Mimikyu's allies completely depleted, Box tags in and has more than enough physical bulk to soak up the totem's remaining hits and finish her off with just a few more flamethrowers. That's the 6th island trial defeated completely deathless, in no small part to the hardest working pooch this side of Balto. I simply could not be more proud of Topic. Because with the new level cap, we can fire off a string of long-awaited evolutions. Tamale, Wings, and Stuff all take their final forms, and now that we've made it to Ula Ula Meadow, Toddy gets to retire her pom-poms and officially join the team as our second fire flying type. After a brief and unremarkable raid of Po Town, we quickly find ourselves facing off against the Ula Ula Island Kahuna Nanu, a man who I've noticed can run the gamut from being a total pushover to being exceptionally difficult depending on the challenge. Really, it boils down to whether you have a dark type resist, and we actually happen to have several, including 2 that can rip pretty nasty stab fighting type moves into his Acerola Persian. Tamale's close combat isn't quite enough for a clean one-shot thanks to our foe's fur coat ability, but Streak is able to pretty easily come in and finish things off with an extreme speed. So that's the penultimate Grand Island trial defeated. You could argue that that marks the start of the end game, but Ultra Sun's closing third just so happens to be one of the longest in the entire franchise, starting with a series of major and minor boss fights in Aether Paradise. The 2 hardest fights, though, are those against Guzma and Lusamine. We've faced Guzma twice before, and on paper bug types shouldn't be much of a problem, but the 4 that he uses are all quite powerful, and many have ways to hit fire types for super effective damage. Exhibit A, he leads with the part water type Galissapod, which Toddy wastes no time eviscerating with a supersonic Sky Strike Z move. That brings in Pinsir, and with Stone Edge as well as a full 252 speed EVs, he's a force to be reckoned with. So to start, I switch to the sun-setting half of the Turtle Sisters, who's guaranteed to tank a hit. Then I can bring in Tamale, whose fighting type means that he only takes neutral damage and is therefore also guaranteed to survive a hit. With the Sun Boost, Fire Punch slaughters Pinsir, and then this conveniently baits in Masquerain, who Tamale barely outspeeds and kills with another Sun-boosted Fire Punch. So now Guzma's down to his slow but devastatingly powerful Vikavolt, and thanks to Masquerain's Intimidate, we don't get the KO here. Fortunately, Potato's Dragon typing ensures that she resists Vikavolt's powerful Thunderbolts, and without a paralysis, she's free to clean up against Alola's most loyal simp. I get it, dude. And speaking of, the Blonde Bombshell is a uniquely difficult fight, almost entirely due to her max special attack, max speed Milotic, who threatens my entire team with Hydro Pumps. Even in the sun, a single critical hit will rip apart damn near every single one of my Pokemon like a freshly baked loaf of sourdough bread. Of course, Potato takes neutral damage, but Milotic also happens to know Dragon Pulse. And to make matters worse, Lusamine has seemingly random AI, probably because she cray-cray. So it's impossible to accurately predict what she's gonna do, which makes, for example, stalling out all 5 of her Hydro Pump power points significantly harder. So I need a plan that can outpredict the unpredictable. Lusamine's lead is Clefable, which means that Pocket can sit in and use Confide to neuter her damage output before switching to Box for the Sun. With the stage properly set, I bring in Dog, luckily on a Psychic, to remove the chance of a potential critical hit. This setup allows Dog to take the kill with a Sun-boosted Flame Charge, critically granting a speed boost that, you guessed it, gives my bipedal beast the speed advantage as my Milotic slithers onto the field. Thanks to Dog's natural bulk, we narrowly survive 1 critical hit Hydro Pump in the sun, though after we go for our first necessary Darkest Lariat, Lusamine opts for an Icy Wind to regain the speed advantage. So on the following turn, Milo rips a Hydro Pump, and Dog handily survives the critless hit, meaning that he's free to go full WWE and rip a powerful, malicious Moonsault Z move that pulverizes Milotic like a bushel of bananas that ended up in the hands of Greg from Disney Channel UK.
Of course, if you don't have time to caramelize, pulverize!
From there, Lusamine's remaining Pokemon are significantly less dangerous. With careful positioning, we slice through them like a trifecta of perfectly cooked fish fillets, and after some story-driven cutscenes, we're off to Alola's Necrozma's fourth and final island. Here we can snag the last batch of new encounters for the playthrough, including our fifth fire-type starter from Ancient Pawnee Path, Wheels the Delphox. I guess Tepig and Cyndaquil missed the flight to Alola. Wait a minute, Tepig and Cyndaquil are the only fire-type starters not in Ultra Sun, and they're also the two fire-type starters for the Legends games. Coincidence? Almost certainly. With Machamp Shove in my Poke Ride, I can also access the innermost cave of Lush Jungle, where the plan was to snag a sweet little Larvesta. But apparently they have an encounter rate of 1%, so after another expensive but fairly priced cost-benefit analysis, I decided to just settle for AF the Salandit. That brings us to the penultimate island trial that pits me against the Totem Kamo'o of Vast Pawnee Canyon. And strangely, this guy is usually not that scary. Even with an Omni boost, he really doesn't hit that hard thanks to generally low base power moves. And Streak can even use a combination of Intimidate and a Zoom Lens boosted Will-O-Wisp to completely neuter the Dragon-type Totem. Really, it's his allies that tend to be more problematic, what with Noivern's ability to rip nasty boom bursts and flinch-inducing air slashes, so as usual, the plan is to take him out first. Streak trades an extreme speed for a boom burst that drops our fluffy boy to just 36 HP, so from there, we pivot into Wheels, who manages to weather the dragon's assault and chip away with Size Shock. A bit of coordinated switching with Pocket to do another round of chip keeps the pressure up, and eventually a Flare Blitz puts the bullish bat down for good. Scizor arrives on cue, but even with Light Screen going up, Box's sun-boosted Flamethrower deletes her immediately, and with burn damage continuing to drain Kamo'o, the Turtle Sister can calmly stall out the powerful Percussionist, securing us a fairly easy win. But now we move on to the late game's actually problematic dragon, because deep in Ultra Space, we have to face off against an Omni-boosted level 60 Ultra Necrozma, who can outspeed and one-shot literally every single one of my Pokemon. So we are, of course, relying on a tried-and-true strategy inspired by one of the oldest and dumbest tricks in the Showdown rage-baiting community: fear. Or in this case, Fiai. Necrozma's Photon Geyser drops Tamale down to just 1 HP, triggering the lone Focus Sash in the game, and then with an Endeavor, Necrozma's HP plummets down to 1 as well. Now, the Fear strat generally concludes with Rattata sniping his 1 HP opponent with a priority quick attack, but poor Tamale doesn't have a priority move since, even though he does learn Mach Punch, the move relearner in Ultra Sun is locked away at the top of Mount Lanakila. That means that we need a sacrifice, and we've got the perfect two-letter loser for the job. AF trembles into his debut battle before immediately getting obliterated by a second Photon Geyser. But this noble sacrifice then grants a free switch to Streak, who with his priority extreme speed takes out Necrozma and brings peace to all of Alola. Back on Poni Island, we've now got the final trial of the game, which requires facing off against Mina and a smorgasbord of other trial captains to collect flower petals that turn into some sort of children's art project thing. I think it's a metaphor! None of these fights are worthy of your time or attention, and the same could be said about the final Totem Ribombee, who despite a double Omni boost really has nothing to threaten Pocket. Sure, a Quiver Dance gets her to +3 special attack, and sure, a held Okaberry ensures that she survives our massive 190 base power Inferno Overdrive, but we still do enough damage for Ribombee to call in Blissey over the weather-setting Pelipper, and though a Helping Hand boosted hit is certainly scary, Ribombee brilliantly opts for a second Quiver Dance, ensuring that Pocket's free to take the kill at full HP, recoil notwithstanding. Fire Fang is then enough to pop the Blissey, and with that, we've defeated the final island trial of the game. So now there's just a few more challenges left, starting with the final Grand Island trial of the game. Hapu uses ground types, which in theory is quite bad, but in practice ends up being yet another easy matchup. Wheels, equipped with a choice specs for added damage, is able to use Grass Knot to cull through the chubby Golurk and Mudsdale. Gastrodon is a little too light for us to get the one shot, so I make sure to switch into Box to set up the Sun, and then into Wings on a Mud Bomb, who proceeds to rip a series of nasty solar beams that eventually secure the KO. That leaves Flygon. Hapu's really a small child after my own heart. This guy only has 2 moves though, Dragon Breath and Earth Power. So by using U-Turn for Chip, I can switch to any of my other Pokemon to rebait Earth Power, granting a safe switch back to Wings, who can continue to chip away with U-Turn until Flygon's in range to a Supersonic Sky Strike Z move that ends the battle. And just like that, we've cleared every trial that Alola has thrown at us. Through torrid totems and increasingly capable captains, we've earned our ticket to the Pokemon League. The final stop awaits, and if everything goes according to plan, a spot in the Hall of Fame will soon be ours. But first, Gladion wants one final battle, and after a playthrough of underwhelming matchups, this one should be no different. Gladion leads with his Crobat, and after getting burned by a Will-O-Wisp from Streak, Potato's Shell Trap scores an easy KO. That then baits out Lucario. Sure, Lucario. Well, I switched to Dog, and sacre bleu, Lucario was a Zoroark all along! His Black Hole Eclipse merely tickles Dog after you factor in Leftovers recovery, and so by tanking a Hyper Voice, we can use a slow U-turn for solid damage and a free switch to Tamale, who tanks another Hyper Voice from the Speedy Fox, and then scores the KO with a Flame Charge, granting the necessary speed boost to deal with Gladion's powerful Ace Legendary. All we gotta do is rip an Expert Pelt boosted close combat for the clean KO. No. I completely forgot that Silvally changes type when holding different memory items. For some reason, I thought it just changed the type of Silvally's signature move, and that buffoonish blunder results in Tamale's untimely demise. With speed, power, and a critical neutral matchup to rock types, he was an absolute lock for the Elite Four team, and though we can still make it through the rest of Gladion's team without a problem, I've now got to reconsider all my matchups for what is looking like a very scary set of Elite Four fights. Olivia and her rock types are obviously the scariest, but every other member has at least one Pokemon that's sure to cause some significant problems unless I'm well prepared. Eventually, I decide that my final team will be Dog, Streak, Wings, Box, Potato, and Wheels. Notice that there's not a single Pokemon without a rock-type weakness, but without Tamale's speed, Stuff the Blaziken just isn't worth the team slot. As we approach the Pokemon League, I'm terrified that after coming so far, we'll fall just short of ultimate victory. But suddenly, I feel a rumble, and Dog bursts from his Pokeball, as if to remind me of everything we've been through. It's been a lifetime since I Lion Kinged him back on Molayne Island. We've faced seemingly insurmountable trials and made it through each and every one of them together. Looking into Dog's eyes, I feel confident that no matter what we face in there, we'll be fine, as long as we have each other and the flame of friendship that was lit so many moons ago continues to burn ever bright. So with that, it's time to become champions of the Pokemon League. First up is Acerola, the Ghost-type specialist, and this is all Dog. Against her lead Banette, we make sure to use a Flame Charge for a speed boost before taking the KO with a Darkest Lariat. Palossand comes in second, and though she's bulky, she's certainly not strong enough to survive a bow in the ring, as a malicious Moonsault gets the clean KO. Delmiste is defensive enough to survive a single hit, but squanders their Soul Turn alive by whiffing a Slam. So as they go down and Frostlass comes in, Dog is still at full HP. Unfortunately, even at +1 speed, the Icy Spirit is still faster and takes the opportunity to rip a Confuse Ray, though Dog remains perfectly clear-eyed as a Darkest Lariat picks up another Oko. Acerola finally does some damage with her Drifblim's Ominous Wind, but the damage is pathetic, and after just 2 more Darkest Lariats, we've scored a victory over the first member of the Elite Four. Logically, the next member of the Elite Four to take on would be Molayne and his Steel types, but I accidentally entered the wrong room, and you actually can't leave once you're in, so Kahili it is. She opens with her Jingoistic Braviary, and I bring in Streak, who immediately rips a Gigavolt Havoc Z move off of Wild Charge for the quick KO. Mandibuzz is in next, and this thing tends to be pretty frustrating, since her bulk makes her extremely difficult to take out, and while she's out, she loves going for highly volatile volatile flatter confusions. After a burn with Will-O-Wisp, I switch to Box, and on the following turn, she's also hit by a flatter, though with a Person Berry, we can at least get off a Stealth Rock. So guess what Mandibuzz does next? I've been screwed by these confusions before, so most of my Pokemon are holding Person Berries, but this time, Box actually needs no help at all to take the KO with just a few more flamethrowers. And since we've managed to snap out of confusion, but maintain the double boost to our special attack, as Hawlucha comes out, Box stays in to eat a Flying Press and delete the Luchadora with another flamethrower. But that brings in Kahili's Ace 2 cannon, and this squinting parrot is genuinely threatening, packing both a flying type Z move off of Beak Blast and the potentially super effective skill link boosted Rock Blast. Sensing that death is circling Box, or should I say squaring Box, I bring in Streak for an Intimidate, who marginally tanks a nasty Beak Blast. Expecting another heavy hit, I switch to the second Turtle Sister, who can tank the damage more effectively, and also isn't at risk to critical hits. 2 Cannon generously misses a Screech, which gives us an opening, and Flamethrower drops him into the yellow. Knowing that he's on his last leg, the Angry Chicken rips a powerful Z move, but it's not quite enough to prevent us from getting the kill with a final follow-up Flamethrower. Last out is Oricorio, who after the Stealth Rock's damage is a prime target for Wheels to take down with a single Psychic. That's 2 trainers down and 2 to go. Molayne is up third now, and his steel types really shouldn't be much of an issue. He leads with his Jingly Keychain, and though Prankster lets him set up a layer of spikes, our Mystical Fire gets the clean KO in return. That immediately baits out Molayne's Tresemme Field Ace, and a predictable Earthquake ensures the safe switch to Wings, who shrugs off a Sucker Punch and rips through Fabio with a single Flare Blitz. That brings in Magnezone third, and with a U-turn we can break their sturdy while simultaneously bringing in Wheels on a Thunderbolt that paralyzes, which means we're no longer faster. Okay, fine, I'll just switch to Potato on another Thunderbolt that also paralyzes. But Potato wasn't faster anyways, so all we need to do is shrug off a Tri-Attack, and that's just great. Well, suddenly I'm in quite a bit of trouble. I gotta bring in Box to set up the sun so that Dog can come in and thankfully not get paralyzed before ripping a boosted Fire Punch for the guaranteed KO. Just kidding, it's a damage roll and we obviously miss out on the kill. But Magnezone's follow-up Thunderbolt mercifully leaves my starter with 3 HP. 2 more than we needed, baby. This means that after some healing from Molayne, we can drop the Magnezone with just a few more hits. But we've still got 2 more Pokemon to deal with, and Metagross is first. It'd be great to just kill this bulky beast with a malicious Moonsault Z move, which was my plan, but Metagross has access to a priority Bullet Punch, so instead I need to switch to Streak and risk an 85% accurate Will-O-Wisp. We do connect and get even luckier by dodging a Zen Headbutt, so Streak can actually stay in for a turn and rip a Flame Wheel, which all but seals things up. By switching first to Box for the Sun and finally to Wings, we take the penultimate KO of the fight with a Flare Blitz and double back with another one to Oko Bisharp. That was supposed to be an easy fight. Crazy how all it takes is a 1% double paralysis. So anyways, here we are at the final fight of the Elite Four versus Olivia and her rock types. Last time we faced off against each other, we were able to take advantage of her Pokemon's relatively weak movesets and our team's comparatively solid bulk, but that is not the case here. 5 full-powered rock types means that there's very little room for error. Olivia leads with Armaldo, and I'm forced to lead with Dog because his secondary dark typing ensures that Armaldo will go for X-Scissor instead of Rock Blast. See, the AI actually calculates the base power of Rock Blast as a single 25 base power hit, so as long as X-Scissor's 80 base power is higher, Armaldo will never click Rock Blast. This ensures that after using a Flame Charge to gain the speed advantage, we can just delete the prehistoric bug with a malicious Moonsault. Except Olivia switches. That is completely unexpected, and of course, quite bad, since it's a pretty big waste of our Z move. A U-turn into Streak for an Intimidate on the Gigalith as Bulldoze chunks our pooch. Streak then lands another clutch Will-O-Wisp before Stone Edge triggers his held Charty Berry. From here, the goal is simple. Safely get Wheels out under the sun so that he can fire off Choice Spec's solar beams. So first is a switch to Box, and with additional burn damage, this should also put Gigalith into healing range to guarantee a completely safe switch to Wheels. Except it doesn't. Instead, a nasty Stone Edge connects and brings Wheels down to under half HP. A critical hit there, even with the burn, and my Psychic Fox is as good as dead. Anyways, Olivia now heals, but it doesn't matter because our Solar Beam takes the KO from full HP. And as Lycanroc comes in next, he too meets the same grassy fate. But that brings in Probopass, and this mustachioed beaut is a tough nut to crack, while also threatening super effective damage with both Power Gem and Earth Power. I immediately switch to Potato and come in on a Thunder Wave. Where have I seen this before? Now, throughout my past playthroughs of these games, I've noticed that this Probopass will always go for Thunder Wave if she's slower, and will also always set up a Sandstorm if one isn't currently up. You know, assuming she doesn't see a kill. So with that knowledge, I make a seemingly risky switch back to Wheels as a Sandstorm does indeed go up. And now that we're no longer locked into Solar Beam, Wheels is free to rip a Mystical Fire for the guaranteed special attack drop as Probopass retaliates with the anticipated Thunder Wave. I risk one last hit on Wheels to get off a second Mystical Fire, and with a decent amount of luck, my fluffy witch survives with 25 HP to spare, or rather 15 HP after the Sandstorm chip. At -2, Probopass's hits are effectively neutral, so long as she doesn't get a crit. But I kinda have to play this as if all of my Pokemon have shell armor and not just Potato, because she really has no way to deal anything other than minor chip to Probopass. Once the Sandstorm dies down, I take advantage of the free-ish turn to bring in Streak, who proceeds to connect with his third Will-O-Wisp in as many fights. This obviously doesn't help reduce Probopass's damage output, but it does do consistent chip. A switch to Box resets the sun, and a Charty Berry ensures the Turtle Sister takes negligible damage from Power Gem. This means that I get yet another free switch to Dog as Probopass uses another Sandstorm. Once again, Probopass will likely go for a Thunder Wave here, so my only play is to rip a Darkest Lariat and hope that that damage, along with Burn Chip, is enough to KO Probopass. If it's not, Olivia will heal, and I will almost certainly lose the run to a freaking Probopass. So, Dog goes for his signature move, and it's gonna be close. Thunder Wave connects, the Sandstorm chips Dog, and Probopass goes down. Of course, we're not exactly out of the woods yet because Olivia still has 2 Pokemon left and most of my team is paralyzed and on death's door. Cradily comes in first, and fortunately Box can use her natural slowness to ensure that our foe won't go for Rock Tombs until she sees a kill. Stealth Rocks are obviously not great, but then Box pulls out an absolutely clutch critical hit flamethrower that comfortably puts us in a winning position. Because after a soft energy ball, Box's slightly stronger Heat Wave finishes the job. So last is Olivia's lead Armaldo, and this is scary since Crush Claw has the same base power as a single hit from Rock Blast after factoring in Stab. It's a 50-50, a coin flip to determine whether Box lives or dies. It all comes down to this. Armaldo uses Crush Claw! Box survives with 28 HP, and with one last massive flamethrower, we take the hard-earned victory over Olivia's rock types. It is nothing short of a miracle that we made it through that fight without a single death, but I really should have been much better prepared, particularly for the Probopass. Not having a single fighting or ground-type move on any of my Pokemon was a massive mistake, but I guess the power of friendship really does triumph over all. And it's gonna really need to come in clutch again for this final fight against Hau, who has a pretty nasty team of heavy hitters, including 2 extremely fast sweepers in the form of Raichu and Noivern, as well as this playthrough's second Hydro Pump spamming bulky water type. But if I want to sit upon my throne, and by golly do I, one way or another, I'm gonna need to beat this board shorts wearing bastard for good. He leads with his aforementioned Alolan Raichu, and I lead with Dog, the beating heart of our team. A Choppleberry ensures that Raichu goes for Thunderbolt instead of Focus Blast, and with the AI's paralysis luck all used up during the Molayne fight, Dog simply shrugs off the hit and rips through the rat with a single Darkest Lariat. That, of course, immediately brings in Vaporeon, so after burning his first Hydro Pump PP with a Protect, I switch to Box for the all-important Sun that will help us weather this brutal onslaught of powerful pumps. Just look at how much a Hydro Pump does to Box in the Sun with a Pasho Berry. A Protect stalls out Hydro Pump number 3 before switching to Potato, who comes in on a baby doll eyes for some reason. Hydro Pump number 4 again does ridiculous damage given it's halved by the Sun, and then our Solar Beam does about 50%. This guy is so bulky. Hoping to burn the 5th and final Hydro Pump, I go for another Protect, but then Hao actually switches out Vaporeon and sends in Decidueye, which is perfectly fine if I'm being honest. Decidueye uses Spirit Shackle, which procs our Shell Trap that brings our rival starter down to a sliver. Expecting a heal, I switch to Dragon Pulse, which ends up seeming like a massive big brain play as Hao switches out again, this time to Noivern. What a sucker. Since our foe's back in the red, I assume he'll now use his first full restore, so I stay in to rip another Dragon Pulse. What? Why didn't he heal? I have never seen the AI not heal in a situation like this. I am genuinely so confused. Does it have to do with the switching? Like, I truly don't understand. And after working so hard for so long, it's absolutely gut-wrenching to see Potato go down. But we owe it to her to see this through. Streak can come in to snipe off the Noivern with an extreme speed, which brings Vaporeon back in. A Protect wastes his final Hydro Pump, ensuring that Box can safely switch in and set up the Sun. And as much as she wants revenge for her sister's death, she'll have to settle with an assist as I switch to Wheels. In the Sun, 2 Mystical Fires get the KO, baiting in Tauros as Hao's 4th Pokemon. Much like against Hapu's Flygon though, I can use the rest of my team to bait Earthquakes for a free switch to Wings, who can do solid damage with a series of U-turns until the poor bastard is in range to a Sun-boosted Flare Blitz. And with that, it's suddenly over. Our rival's down to his last 2 Pokemon, Crabominable and Decidueye, both who fall to 1 more Flare Blitz apiece, winning us not just the battle against Hao, but the entire run. It wasn't clean, and it certainly wasn't close to casualty-free, but on this day, friendship prevailed and we've etched our names into the Hall of Fame. I mean fame. As always, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Or don't, I don't know, but stay tuned for more Nuzlocke content, and until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.